Hey there everyone, Hitesh here, back again with another video, and in this video, we're going to be building an app which I showed you in the last video. This app is going to be an authentication app where you can build a login system, register a user or log in a user, and then you can fetch him some of the protected routes or protected screens that we have. So we'll be working with Appwrite, which is a backend as a service. So we'll be using this one. And it's pretty easy. They do have now a cloud, which makes the setup super easy to work on with that. Now the setup is one time, and this is exactly replicable in all of the other apps that you'll be building on. But this is going to take some time because I'll be explaining each and every stuff, why we are doing it, what is the best practice and all of that. So obviously the video is going to be a lot longer than the previous ones. And of course, it will be in the couple of parts because making a 6-hour video is not an easy job to do. And we'll also be needing some of the third parties NPM packages as well. Some of them are optional, some of them are not so optional. You definitely want to have or should have. But some of them like snack bars and all of them, if you don't want to have them, that's totally okay. But I highly recommend them because they are super easy to pop up the success messages or the error messages, makes life a little bit easier. So this is an ideal setup walkthrough that we are going to have in this one. So first and foremost, go ahead and sign up onto cloud.appwrite.io. It's totally free. You can go ahead and sign up, and then all you have to do is create a project. Now, once I'll go ahead and create a project. So I'm going to call this one as simply YouTube RN auth. So you can name this whatever you like. I since already have an RN auth, and that's why I'm naming this as YouTube RN auth. And this is the project ID. So go ahead and just click on this. It will automatically generate a project ID for you. And all we need to do is grab this project ID. We don't need anything else from here. By the way, if you need something else, all you need to grab is the URL, which actually they give you. The easiest way to grab it is actually click on the web app. And then they ask you what is your app name and all of that. So they give you some of this from here as well. But I'll walk you through that because for all the cloud, the URL is exactly same. If you wish, you can go into settings, and this is the URL. This is the endpoint that we need. This is common for everyone. And this is our project ID. This will be unique for your application. So you can go ahead and grab this one. They also support the custom domain and webhooks. We won't be going in depth onto this one. Our job in this one is to just focus on authentication. So let's go on to authentication now. Make sure you keep an eye on those two things, the URL as well as the project ID. Just note it down somewhere or come back again here to copy them. This is where we'll be getting a list of all the users that we have. We won't be working in the teams as of now. The usage is pretty amazing. This is where you can see all the things like what your users are doing, how many users were deleted, updated, read, create. So this is a good, nice graph. You can also monitor their security, that how much of the users you want to limit yourself, how much is the session length you want to have. So you don't have to configure anything in your application itself. You can just monitor and change all these things on the fly directly here. There's also a session limit. By default, if I read it right in the documentation, it was 10 session per account. But if you want to have, for some security reason, one session in the account, you can just add a button here and click on update. That's all it says. And then we have some security settings here as well. By default, the email password is enabled. So this is exactly what we'll be using. But there are a couple of other options here. As of now, the SDK doesn't support any OAuth like Google and stuff. But definitely, if you request, I'll make a video where there is actually a web because React Native is a different mobile environment. The SDKs are getting updated there. So I'm pretty sure in the future they'll provide or look out for some solution for that, because these days Google is very, very strict about how the OAuth should be there. There's a lot of drama there. Anyways, so we'll be focusing on email and password going on with that. And that's all what we need. Now let's go ahead and first create an application. So I'm going to go ahead and fire up my terminal app. There's a lot of things going on, so I'll just kill this. Yep, there we go. I'll probably have it somewhere else running as well. So I'm going to kill it everywhere, wherever I can find it. First, I'm going to go on to desktop. And on the desktop, we do have React Native. If I do a quick ls, we have a lot of apps going on in here. I think we have created till app 9, and there should be a 10 as well. So there should be 6. So I guess there is only this much of that. Let me just see in the Finder as well that how many of the apps actually we have built so that we can name it correctly. So this is what we have. So we have shopping 10 as well. Yeah, there is this shopping 10. But I don't think so. We do have 11th app. So we will be building our 11th app. That's nice. Let's name this as 11th. So we'll be calling this one. So again, the easiest way to do is npx. And then we can simply say React-native init and the name of the app. So let's call this one as Appwrite auth, and this one is 11. So Appwrite auth 11, I think that's a good name. This one is obviously going to take some time to download the templates and whatnot. There is a lot of files in that. So in the meantime, it does all of this. I'm going to go ahead and walk you through with the third-party packages that we're going to need. Of course, we are working with the native screens, so we definitely need a screen router. So for this, we'll be using React Navigation router. We'll need this basic screens to be installed, obviously. And apart from this, we'll be using the native stack. So some components dependent on that will be installed. And then we'll be using this themed UI, which is React Native UI, Element UI. This is what we'll be using, the themed one, the basic, just to make sure we don't have to worry too much about the CSS. Anyways, I'll be giving you the CSS. You can download them directly from the GitHub. We have already worked on the apps, so we'll be giving. We are not here to discuss CSS that we have already discussed in the first couple of apps. And then we'll be needing is React Native config. So this is really interesting as config. So you might be coming up from the web development background, and there you might have seen we do have .env variable. Whenever there is a secret, we can protect that by providing that in the environment variable, and then we can load it up through the environment variable of the providers like DigitalOcean, AWS, and whatnot. But in the case of React Native, there is no way, yes, absolutely no way that you can protect your environment variables. It just makes your workflow a little easier and a little bit familiar, but this doesn't mean that you are using this package. It will protect your secrets, and your secrets will be secret. Anybody can just look into your app, reverse engineer it, and can find this environment variable. The best strategy is to actually store these kinds of things into a backend as a service, or maybe some backend that you have written in Node, Java, wherever you have written. But things like basic things like your project ID and something, this is absolute basics. You can just dump them into this one. So if the API key is very secretive, you don't afford or cannot afford to actually put this like this, don't put it. That's not a good idea. So go ahead and look for this one. In the meantime, I'll also walk you through. Looks like we have installed it, the Cocoa dependencies and the iOS environment. Yeah, we are not interested in the iOS environment anyways. I'll go into this Appwrite auth, and let's go ahead and fire up our code editor. All right, so this is our code editor that we have, and we'll be working with it. All right, looks great. Let me go ahead and let's go ahead and install the things one by one so that we don't waste our time much. So first and foremost, we need is barebone React Native projects. This is the dependency. So copy this, go back up here, paste it. This is the first thing that we're going to need. We'll also open up our package.json so that we can see what dependencies we are actually installing. So we have React Native safe area content, React Native screens, and React Native. So that is the basic. And we also need, all right, so we need this basic installation of React Navigation native. This is obviously required. So copy that and paste it. Oops, not here. Paste it up here. So we have this one. Now we'll need the native stack as well. So let's go back and just look for the documentation. Here is the native stack. And this is where the native stack is listed. So just copy this, go back up here, and we'll be pasting. So this whole installation of dependencies is for having the navigations and the native stack just like this. So basics here. We'll be also needing this one. So I'll just copy this and we'll go back. This is just for the theming, having good buttons and stuff like that. So there's no big deal there. Very basic. And it's going to take some time. And there we go. So we have this RNUI themed. There is also one more. If you want to play around with this, you can. So this is the one that we have installed is the themed. There is also a base elements that you can go ahead and install. So now we have themed as well as base. But again, depends on if you want to use just the base, you can do that. If you don't want to use any one of them, that's also totally fine. You can write your own styling. That's also fine. Now this is the config, and this requires a little bit of more configuration. It's not like you can just copy and paste this one. This requires a little bit more. In fact, our theme based and stuff sometimes require more, but I'll walk you through. Don't you worry. So in this, we have got this React Native config, but in order to make sure that the config works, we have to scroll this a little bit here, and we have to include these settings into the settings.gradle. So let's go ahead and add these ones. So I'll just copy all of this. So this needs to go into settings.gradle. So let's go ahead and open that up. And there we go. So I'll open up the Android, and inside that we have settings.gradle. So just come at the very end of it, and we're going to be marking it as important config. Paste it up here. Obviously, we don't want to have this plus icon. This was just the basic. So there we go. So now we have this include React Native config and the project React Native blah blah whatever that is. This what it does is actually brings up all the environment variable files and load them into your Android environment as well. Similarly, you have to do the same kind of a step for iOS as well. Make sure you go into the pod install iOS and all of that. So if you're working on iOS as well, follow these steps and make sure you add them here as well. Okay, so this is basic, and then we have to add this dependencies here as well. This dependencies goes into Android app build Gradle. So go up here, Android, then go into app, and then go into build.gradle. So there are two Gradle files. Make sure you don't confuse with them. I'll go at the very end of it. Usually that's easy and nice. So there we go. Now make sure you watch this carefully. This says apply from and the file, and then it provides the file entire path up here. So make sure you pay a small attention there. This is important. And we forgot to save this one. So we'll save this one and go back up here. And now let's go back on to, this is build.gradle. So we'll be working on build.gradle. So let's go back and we need build.gradle. So dependencies, we don't need to copy this dependency. We just need to implement these. And Android settings.gradle, build.gradle. So let's go into dependencies. First, let's see. Where is the dependencies? Okay, so just give me a second. I'll just figure it out. Looks like we need to go at the very end of it. Build.gradle looks like. And let's see that if we can actually add this. We probably don't need it. Let me just check this quickly. All right, so I had to check a little on their GitHub as well that what this is going on. The reason why I got a little bit into the confused mode is because they're saying this one is fine that, hey, add this file into settings.gradle. That is fine. We did that. But here it's saying go to Android app and build Gradle and use this dependencies. There is no dependencies in here. So I think there's some mistake in this, because if you go into Android and build.gradle, this is where dependencies are. But if you go into Android and app and then build.gradle, there is no dependencies here. So I'm pretty sure there is some kind of a mistake in writing or something. We don't need to add any of this to actually make sure that this works. You just need to add one thing into this settings.gradle, and that's it. It works out of the box with this one. We tried while building this app and this works fine. So if anything goes wrong, we'll definitely go and come back and try to debug this. All right. Moving ahead. So I just looked into their GitHub and all of that. The same thing is mentioned up here. Probably they'll update this soon. Anyways. Next up is React Native snack bar, and we don't have anything much. You can see the usage is pretty straightforward. You just install it and it works out of the box. I love the packages which works like this, works out of the box. So let's go ahead and have this React Native snack bar. There's no much of the configuration with the snack bar and stuff. It automatically shows up here, React Native snack bar. Love that. Okay, moving on. There we go. We have vector icons. This is going to have some of the additional configuration. So let's go ahead and work on with this. So this is React Native vector icons. There we go. And it's super easy to work on with this one as well. The settings are there definitely. So here we can see in the Android. So there is something we need to add into Android app build Gradle, definitely not in the Android build Gradle. So this is what we need to actually go ahead and copy this. So select all of this, copy this, and just go back. And let's go into Android app and build.gradle. So this is where we need to add this, but only thing you might notice here is that notice here the way how this is getting applied is a little bit different. We definitely need to apply it. No, we are actually applying it in proper Android app build.gradle. Yes. So we need to actually wrap this up inside a file, just like this is how it is being done. So just go ahead and wrap this up in a parenthesis and then just go ahead and add a file. So this is kind of a configuration that you have to do. Probably the documentation needs a little bit more updates. So this is what we have to do. And what we're going to do here is let's go back onto this config. There we go. So notice here in the config as well, they are saying that, hey, add this into the settings.gradle and all of this. But what we noticed is this kind of a project, this also needs to be added into the build Gradle. I think the documentation is little lapsing behind, but we can actually come up with that. So just select from the project, all the way till Android. Copy that, go back. And this settings needs to be done in the Android app and build Gradle. So just copy and paste this one. And all we have to do is say apply. Come on, apply. And then we have to say project, the React Native config, project.directory, get path. And nope, not this one. Let me just go ahead and try to give you the exact one that we found out and used it. So here it is in the documentation. If you scroll a little bit here, notice here, I scrolled a little bit. Extra step for Android, you also need to manually apply a plugin to your app from Android app build Gradle. So yep, this is the line that you have to say apply from project, blah, blah stuff, and all of this. So copy this, go back and paste this. So this is what says apply project, blah, blah stuff, and all of this. So this is some of the important configurations. So I'll just add a line here. Important config. So we have done a couple of configurations. The first one is being done into the build.gradle. Again, this is a build.gradle in Android app build.gradle. So this is the one that we have done. There are a couple of other settings that we have done. This is directly in the settings.gradle. Again, this is for React Native config. And we have done a project level configuration for the React Native config, which is just a .env file. If you want to add this, that's there. If you don't want to add it, you don't have to do this much. But this is a good practice. A lot of people needs to do this. Again, we have nothing inside the dependencies as of now. So technically, in theory, it should be working and compiling as of now fine. But let's see if it does or not. We have to change some configuration. But these are all the packages and all the settings that we needs to do. Let me just check. Snack bar is done. This one is done. And this one I was checking just the documentation for vector icons. All right, let's try and see if the application actually builds. So npx react-native, and we're going to say run Android. Oops, run Android. And hopefully this will be building the things and we'll be configuring it fine. We don't need this terminal. We are done with it. And let me, by the time, fire up my my actual device as well. So looks like my device is not visible. Oh, my device is actually minimized. So this is the app that we are building up, but let's see how does it looks like. When we try to run it on Android, automatically installs it there. Just fingers crossed that it works every single time. All right, so our app is at least working on the real device. That is fine. Now we can actually close this. We don't need it. We can actually stop the device running as well. We don't want to consume extra bandwidths and processing powers here. And let's close this. All right. Okay, now it's time that we actually do the configurations first. So first and foremost, what we're going to do is we will be creating an environment variable. That is where majority of our work is going to be done. That is why we have done so much of configuration. So let's just go ahead into the root of directory and create a .env. And I'll be creating one more as well for you, which will be .env.sample, or I can name it as sample-env, sample-env. So both files are there. Sample-env is just to make sure that what I'm writing in env, I actually give it to you as well. So I'll be adding just a couple of endpoints here. The first one is going to be API write endpoint. So this one is going to be just a basic string, just like this. And we have one more, which is Appwrite project ID that we have. So we'll be just adding this one. So how to fill the values of these one? Let's go back onto our browser and see that how this is going to be done. Go into Appwrite auth. So into the settings. Do we have in the settings? No, we don't need to go into settings. Go up here. And the first thing that we need is a project ID, but I can go into settings and copy this API endpoint. First, we need this one. So let's go into the code. And this is my endpoint. And going back onto this one, I need the project ID. And that is it. That is it we need to have. Project ID. Now I'm going to go ahead and copy all of this and will provide you into sample-env so that in case you are also following along working on that, you can actually go work with that. So this one is you need to add your own. So I'll just say add your own. The URL endpoint is not a big deal. It's just really basic, so we don't have to worry. Now, if you have the proper project ID, you will be able to do proper authentication, add some files and all of that. So no need to worry about the project ID. If the project ID doesn't exist or somebody try to just have this, this is already very unique. So you don't need to worry. I'll just save this one. So this is the basic. Now we can actually configure and have an access of pretty much anything to everything directly up here. So let's first go into a new directory, and we're going to call this one as source. So environment variables can be accessed now into any file wherever you like by using these configs. So I'll show you how to do this. Now inside the source, first we're going to do is take this app.tsx and move it into source. Let's move this. And yes, please update all the import statements that you have. All right. Now we won't be working into app just right now. We'll be creating first and foremost our Appwrite folder. We need to do the configuration there. So let's create a new folder and call this one as Appwrite. The great thing about this folder is we'll be writing our code in such a way that it creates, or we'll be building a service in itself. So later on, if you have any other application where you need these kinds of authentication service, you can just take this file, inject there, and it works out of the box. So this is what the practice we'll be following up here. So a couple of things. First and foremost, let's go ahead and create a new file. We're going to call this one as service.ts. This is where majority of the fun is going to happen. This is the service that we are going to create. All right. So first and foremost, what we need to do is we need to bring some stuff from Appwrite. Remember, we have installed this one. Did we install Appwrite? That is the big question. Did we install Appwrite? So dependencies, no, we didn't install the Appwrite. We didn't install the major guy. So npm install Appwrite. Pretty easy. Everybody remembers that. Okay, shouldn't take much of the time. Now we have Appwrite. Okay, so we have access to Appwrite now. Now we can actually go ahead and bring some stuff from Appwrite. There we go. What do we really need to bring for the Appwrite? There are a lot of things that are offered inside the Appwrite. Depends on what services you want to use. Database, storage, and all of that. So you can see there is account, client, database, function, GraphQL, and whatnot. There is so much. So we'll be just bringing an ID to create unique IDs. We'll be taking some advantage of account service, and we'll be obviously need a client. So that client can talk to the Appwrite SDK, bring all the things back like sessions and all these things. So we'll be using this one. We also need somebody to talk to the Appwrite. So for this, we'll be importing the config from React Native config, and we'll also be importing snack bar. So we'll be saying, hey, let's grab a snack bar from React Native snack bar. That's it. Now, the step one, always and always, is to create an Appwrite client. How we can create that? This client will help us to create an Appwrite client. So let's go ahead and say this is Appwrite client, and this will be created by new client. There we go. So now we have an object created from this client known as Appwrite client, and we can talk to it, ask a lot of information and all of this. Let's go ahead and extract some of the constants and variables. So we're going to go ahead and call this one as Appwrite underscore endpoint. And this endpoint will be of type string, and that will be coming up from config, and config can access all of these. So I'll be just saying Appwrite endpoint. So this Appwrite endpoint actually comes from .env. So notice here, this Appwrite endpoint, this is exactly. And that's it. This is the easiest way. Again, make sure you understand that we are never protecting our environment variables in React Native. This is just a way, straightforward way of keeping all of your variables and environment variables at centralized position. But this doesn't mean it's protecting them. It is not protecting them. Now, apart from this, we'll be just making an exclamation sign here to make sure that, yes, we know what we are doing. This is 100% a string that is coming up from there. All right. So similarly, we'll be going ahead and putting up an Appwrite underscore project ID, and that will be of a type string, and that will be coming up from config dot, and this time we'll be saying Appwrite project ID. Again, an exclamation to make sure that, yes, we are aware of it, that if this false or there is an error, if we are not able to bring it back, that's on us. We know the fault is ours, and it might impact all of this. Okay. Now we need to create a couple of types here because we are using TypeScript. Again, if you're using JavaScript, you don't need to do this, but this type is for when we'll be registering the user and we'll be logging in the user. So let's just call this one as create user account. And this will be of type of an object. What are we bringing in? Email as a string. And then we are bringing password and name. Password, string, and a name, which will also be a string. All right, so we have now this create user email. Similarly, we'll be having one more. So let's just go ahead and duplicate this one. This one will be simply login user account. So let's just call this one as login user account. In this, we won't be having name. It will be just email and password. So these are two types that we have created, and later on we can use these types. Now comes the major part of the service. So far, this was just a preparation phase. Now what we need to do is simply go ahead and create a service. We'll be creating a class, and in that class, there will be a variety of methods that you can use around. And that's why this service is so much reusable. Let's just go ahead and call this one as simply a class, and then we'll be having Appwrite service. All right. Once we have this Appwrite service, first and foremost, let's go ahead and bring in an account. All right. So from where this account is actually coming in, that we haven't discussed, but definitely we are going to go ahead and work on with this. Just have this variable as of now. This has explicit, implicit, any, and all of this. We'll definitely talk about this, but right now just keep it there. I'll definitely explain this in just a minute. Moving further, we have just this account. Consider this as a global. I'll just come back onto this in a second. But first, let's create constructor. This constructor will help you to understand why we have created this account and why it's needed. So basically, in theory, what we have is we always need a global variable account in which we can have the information whether user is logged in or not. So that's why it is up here. Absolute, really basic. Let's have this constructor just like this. So whenever somebody calls this class Appwrite service, we will have a constructor, and this constructor will actually talk to Appwrite's cloud server. So for this, we'll be having this Appwrite client that we just created with the client, and then it will set an endpoint. So the first thing that we are going to go ahead and set an endpoint. In this, all you have to do is give the variable Appwrite endpoint. That's it. Apart from this, it also needs to know that what project in your cloud that you are working on. So for that, you have to provide the project ID. So I'll just go ahead and say set endpoint, set project. It's actually, yeah, here it is, set project. And here I have to give the simple Appwrite project ID. That's it. Now, as soon as there is a constructor, it will automatically call these methods and it will connect to Appwrite's this one. Now, once you have connected to this one, then we are going to go ahead and reference this dot account. Yeah, that is the reason why we actually declared it at the top, so that not just constructor, anybody can access this. And all you have to do is now use the account which we just imported from the Appwrite and go ahead and pass on this Appwrite client here. So this is the most boilerplate syntax, and this is again recommended and mentioned in the documentation as well. If you go on to the Appwrite and just quickly look at the documentation. So I'll just go on to Appwrite and we need to go into docs. So there's no link here of the docs. I thought it will be. Anyways, we can just go ahead and Google onto this Appwrite docs. Appwrite docs, and we can just directly go for the auth docs. So the properties and everything is exactly same. Notice here they are exactly doing the same. I'm just replicating exact same stuff. So they are importing the client account ID and all of this from Appwrite. Then I simply go ahead and create a client. So this is how we are doing it. So Appwrite client, instead of doing this in all one line, we are separating it out, and then we are simply going ahead. Now simply go ahead and have this account and new account and pass on this client, or if you have just directly pass on this, in our case, Appwrite client, just go ahead and directly pass that. So it's exactly the same. If you are comfortable more with that, go ahead and do that. Okay, now the constructor is set. That means anybody who creates an instance of this class, always and always going to have an endpoint, and there will be an account that I can use multiple times wherever I need it, and can pass on different functions and all of this. Now it's easier thing, because what we're going to do is create a new record of user inside Appwrite. Okay, how can I do this? Absolutely simple. Go back into the docs and I'll zoom it out. And there are a lot of users that you can create an account onto this one. Email, this is exactly what we'll be doing. So here it says create basically a web, Flutter, Android, anonymous user. And here it is, create anonymous session. I think we are somewhere here. Create account. Let me see in the docs itself that we are in the account, because we don't want to just log in. We want to create an account. And let me just go ahead and show you. And here it is, create email, create an account. There we go. And here it is. So here is the account and it just says create, but I think it's not updated here. Probably I've seen it somewhere else. Anyways, I'll go back and show you how it is being done. So obviously this needs to be an async operation because create an account takes some time. So what we're going to do is, again, we'll be using exact same method here. Don't you worry on that part. When I say create account, we'll always be using this exact method. So if you can zoom this, yeah, there we go. So we'll be using account.create. This is exactly the thing that we have to use, but we'll be wrapping it around with our own method name. We won't be calling it as create. We'll be calling it as create account. You can call it anything what you like, but this will be a wrapper around this method. All right. So let's just go ahead and call our method as async, and then we're going to go ahead and say create account. Feel free to name it anything. This is not the actual method that runs with the Appwrite. And this create account, whoever is actually using will pass me on a couple of values. So email, and he'll be passing me on a password and a name. I don't have to worry about encrypting the password, anything like that all. I can just go ahead and use on. And this whole will be a type of create account. And that's the reason why we actually use the type of the TypeScript just like that, basics. And once we are in here, we can just go and open up this. There we go. Now let's go ahead and try catch, because obviously this might fail. This is a database operation. This is bound to fail in a lot of condition. Let's handle the error part first, because that's the easiest one. For the error part, we can go ahead and use the snack bar and can use a property of .show. Now show takes a lot of object as a parameter. You can provide them as many as you wish. First of all, text. What text do you really want to show? I want to wrap up a string or show a string, which is an error. So I'll just directly show an error string, just like that. Errors are already taken care in the Appwrite, so I don't have to worry in that at all. Then we have to go ahead and use a duration. Duration. Probably I forgot to put a comma. There we go. Now, once we have this duration, there we go. All you have to do is use a snack bar, and there will be suggestions available to you. How much length you want, length long, short. I'll go with the length long. Again, depends on you what you really want to do. Once we have this, for our purpose also, let's log the console logs. So console.log, and what we'll be doing is Appwrite and service, and then we're going to be putting it like this. And we have problem in create account. This is the method where we need to check and debug further. And then we're going to be going ahead and use a plus icon. And then we'll be dumping down the error. This is for us so that we know where the actual problem is, because obviously coders makes issues, and we are coders. We make a lot of issues, so no problem there. Okay, now it's time to create the account. So creating the account of the user is absolutely simple. We can just always say that, hey, this dot account, remember, this is exactly what they are mentioning. I'm using this dot account because in my class, I've already created a top account. But in case you don't have this, if you are using this kind of strategy, then also it's fine. So we'll just go like that. So this dot account is going to use a method of create, and that's it. And I have to pass on a couple of things into this account. Now notice here in the account, this is how you have to pass on. You don't have to pass on an object. This is the mistake that we did when we were creating this. So there is no object inside it. There is just directly that you have to pass on whatever the values you actually want to pass on. User ID and email is compulsory. After that, whatever you pass on, it will just hold those values. So let's hit an enter. First thing that we're going to do is ID. You can use UIDs and all of that, but since Appwrite provides an ID, why to actually bother installing another package? And we'll be saying that, hey, I want to make this ID as unique, just like this, and that's it. Another compulsory parameter is email. So you have to provide the email. That's how it works. And after this, you can go ahead and provide other things like password and other thing like name. If you have more, you can definitely go ahead and provide more. There is no problem. Now, once this has created this account, let's hold this into a variable. So which variable do you want to hold it? Let's create another one. Let's call this one as user account. And since this is a database operation, and database, I as always say, is always in another continent. So make sure you await this operation. Okay, so now we have a user account that is being created. Now let's see what should we do after this? So it totally depends on what your user flow is. Account is already being created. So if a user account is there, then what do you want to do? I don't want to do much. I want to log in this user at the same time. Now, again, your flow might be just giving a snack bar that, hey, account created successfully, move back the user on login screen. That's up to you. I'll be simply going ahead and logging the user so that you also understand that login can also be done. So how to do this login? all we have to do for this login is we can simply authenticate and log in the user. Again, we have to return this, otherwise it will not work. Return, and we're going to say this dot and login. Just like we have this, we can actually go ahead and log in. How do we log in? This time we have to pass on an object. Yes, this is a little inconsistency, but actually you can go ahead and work on with this. So this is a little inconsistency there. Create an account. Let me just go ahead and show you that. So this is account, create an account and create email session. I think this is where I saw it. Probably create email session, and this is create email session, where we'll be having this login. So no, this is not inconsistency. Actually, my bad. So this is where we will be having. Okay, going back onto the code editor itself. Okay, so we'll be saying this dot login, and there will be passing on all these values. So email and password. Email and password. But your question might be, hey, where is this dot login exist? This dot login doesn't exist. So we need to mark it to do for ourselves. So let's go ahead and say to do, and we'll be saying create login feature. All right. Okay, so this is our user flow as of now. This is how we are going to be working with this. I hope that is okay. Now, if the user account is there, that's great. Otherwise, we can simply else mark an else port as well, else part, not port. We can go ahead and say return user account, whatever the user account is. We just want to get it back. If it is null, undefined, and front end can actually do this. So I hope now you understand that actually it is super easy to work with Appwrite. We just were able to create a user account just like this, no problem at all. The only problem right now we have is login. But just like we have created this create account, I think it's super easy to work on and try to create or try to have a login as well. Let's try that as well. Again, this will be an async operation. Oops, my bad. Again, this is an async operation because database is another continent, but this is going to be exact replica. What you have learned so far, you can actually go ahead and do this. So login, in this, we expect that somebody is going to pass me an email and somebody is going to give me a password, just like this. And this will be of type login user account. This is a method, just like this. Again, a database operation. So we're going to go ahead and do a try catch. We can actually borrow some code from the catch part. That is allowed. So in the catch part, we'll just copy this and we'll just paste it up here. So snack bar shows text string length long. This time the problem might be in the login. Oops, not login, login account. And that's it. Looks okay. Now let's work in the try part. And the try part is the same. We'll be using this exact same method, which is create email session. I would love that if this would be an object, but anyways, we can do. We cannot force them to implement what we like and what we don't like. So let's go ahead and say that, hey, we want to create this. So again, this will be an await, and we'll be having this dot account, and we can have this create email session. And this create email session takes an email and a password. All right, so session is being created, but we need to actually return this session, and there we can analyze it more. So this actually returns a promise where you can have the response and all these details. We don't want to hold this response in a variable and then pass it on. We directly want to send it on to whoever is calling this method. So we're going to be just directly saying return. There we go. That's it. We don't want to bother about having all these details. Okay. So this is really basic. We have implemented a login as well as we have implemented a create account as well. So there we go. Now we'll be adding a couple of more functionality, not couple, in fact, just the two. How we can get a user once it is logged in, because we have this promise with us. So we need to have some kind of method that we can grab users information. Another one is logout, how we can terminate the session of the user. So that's pretty much basic. Now, everything you might have noticed is happening through this account, and this account is created just here, just like this. So this is the most powerful thing in the auth system. All right. So let's just again go with the async and say get current user or user details, whatever you like. And we'll go just like this. There we go. Now coming back again, try catch. Yep. And do we want to have this try catch exactly like snack bar? Probably not. You can actually try that. I'll just go ahead and grab a simple console log here. So I'll just say console log. Yeah, being a little lazy, but I think you can try this. This is a mistake in get current user and error. That's great. Now, how we can grab the current user? Now, this is also mentioned in the documentation. Again, I'm not making anything up. I'm just reading the docs and we are just doing things from here. So get account, you click up here and it says, hey, there is a method on the account which says .get. That's it. There's nothing here. So we can just go ahead and say this .account, and this .account can have a method get, and it will get all the details about current user. You can log this out as well in case you want to know that what details it actually returns you back. So we're gonna go ahead and say await just like this. There we go. Did I say it correct? Yep. Okay, so this is our get current user again. And there's one more, which is async logout. And you might have guessed it right. No, we are not going to be implementing for our own brain. We will be actually using, again, the docs. So async, and let's see, how do we log out? Go back and see the docs. It was somewhere here. Come on, it was somewhere here. Do I need to search it? It's actually just one line. Logout, there we go. Here it is, the logout. So here is the endpoint. And where it is? No, not here, the create JWT. Let me just show you. It's actually somewhat method name. So let me just directly search the method name. It's cheating, but yeah, it's actually delete session. So yeah, here it is. So whenever you want to log out, just delete the session and it will delete all the sessions that the user is having. So that's all what we have to do. Again, the exact same code. So let me just grab this try catch block because this is exactly what we are doing. And the only difference is this time we are going to be returning this one and we'll be saying delete session. There is a delete sessions as well, by the way, but we'll be using delete session and we have to provide some more information onto this. Which session do you want to delete? That's the interesting one. So there are a couple of parameters which you can pass on. You can either pass on the session ID. That, hey, this is exactly the session ID. But the problem is, how do you want to get a session ID? In order to get the session ID, you have to actually grab the details, which is the current user. .get actually gives you the session ID. Either pass on this, or there is an easier way to actually deal with this. You can just pass on a string which says current. So it just only logs out the current session, which is requesting for that. So yeah, Appwrite makes it a little bit easier for us. Once we are done with this, all we have to do is go ahead and say export default, and we have to say Appwrite service. A lot. Yeah, that's a big video. But notice here how easy it is. Now you can actually take this file, take this class, and wherever you need to implement this, whether on web, whether on mobile app or anywhere, you can actually take this file and use this. This is so much of reusable code. Everything is stored into variables. Everything is properly mentioned. So this is such a good file that we have. Now, once we have this file, then we need to obviously create a context around it, all of that. But I think I'll keep this video as a separate so that whenever you need to learn about authentication section only, you can watch this video. And definitely in the next video, we'll just go through and we'll perform all these rest of operation. Quite a long video. Hope you are going to get some subscribe or some like there. I'm exhausted. I'll catch you up in another video.